A pleasant good morning to our viewing and listening audiences. Before we proceed, I would just like to extend apologies for our delay in starting, but welcome all the same to today's press conference. My name is Sanjay Greenidge. I am the Information Officer for the Premier's Office, and I'll be your host. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Premier, Dr. Natalia D. Wheatley, and also the other senior public officers here in attendance. Premier Wheatley will provide updates on two matters of national significance, namely the approval of the 100 million loan in the House of Assembly and also the removal of travel restrictions for Guyanese nationals entering the British Virgin Islands. Following the Premier's remarks, we will open the floor to the members of the media as customary. Two questions will be permitted per media host, but to ensure that the issues are adequately ventilated, we'll also allow for two follow-ups, and at the discretion of the Premier, and if time permits, we'll have a second segment of questions and answers. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Premier to the podium. Premier, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sanjay, and good morning to the people of the Virgin Islands and the members of the press. Before I get into the two aforementioned topics, I'll begin this morning's press conference with the good news that last week in the House of Assembly, we passed the final piece of statutory board legislation representing the completion of the first phase of statutory reform. Statutory board reform was the final recommendation that the government was working on in response to Sir Gary Hickenbottom's recommendations. My government places immense value on the reforms coming out of the COI. We have been unwavering in our commitment and steadfast in implementing its recommendations under our democratic process. We see it as the most comprehensive and robust governance reform in the history of the Virgin Islands. And we embrace the opportunity to strengthen our systems of government and capacity in our institutions to support the implementation of its recommendations. Though challenging over the 2-year period, senior civil servants and elected officials have worked diligently to ensure that the implementation of the recommendations meet and in some cases exceed the COI requirements. This is despite significant events such as our ongoing recovery from the 2017 hurricanes and subsequent storms, the interruption caused by the general election, meeting the day-to-day operational demands of the government and resource constraints. I believe that we have done exceptionally well in the circumstances. Let me take this opportunity to thank PS Carolyn Stout-Igwe and her team for the leadership role they have played throughout this process. I also wish to thank our governance reform manager, Mr. Kedrick Malone, and his team, the financial secretary, permanent secretaries and their teams, the cabinet secretary and attorney general and their teams, the governor, deputy governor and their teams, the speaker and her team, my ministers and the members of the House of Assembly. I also thank my acting director of communication and her team, acting chief information officer and GIS for the role they have played in the process. Our work of governance reform, however, is not over. In fact, moving forward, we will ensure that strengthening our governance is institutionalized and normalized as we build a sustainable nation. We will work with the governor and his team as we await assent to the remaining pieces of legislation. There are recommendations that require constitutional amendment as well as action on the part of the judiciary. And we must pass regulations for vetting which can withstand constitutional scrutiny. We must also turn our attention to proper implementation of policies, processes, and legislation passed. We have already set out the structure and process for executing our medium to long-term governance reform plan, which includes a comprehensive education and awareness program for public officers and the wider public, as well as a monitoring and evaluation function to ensure reforms are fully relevant, understood, applied, and institutionalized. We look forward to welcoming OT Minister Stephen Doughty here in November so we can share all of the good work we have done, not only on governance reform, but also strengthening our institutions in the fight against illicit finance. We are also anxious to continue our discussions with him on the need for support on building climate resilience. We also have more good news to share coming out of the House of Assembly. On Thursday, we passed a resolution approving a $100 million loan facility, the largest loan in the history of the Virgin Islands. I want to thank the Ministry of Finance for their support in arriving to this point. In particular, I thank Michelle Phillips and Drexel Glasgow, who were instrumental in all the preparatory work for having this loan approved. Our plans to borrow were incorporated into our medium-term fiscal plan. And for the first time in our history, we approved in Cabinet and laid on the table of the House of Assembly a debt management strategy, ensuring that we had a strategy to support the sustainable management of our debt. Though it was not required, we engaged in a competitive bidding process to ensure we got the best terms and conditions available at this time. The team did excellent work. This loan facility will assist us in fixing our infrastructure and building and improving our facilities. Close to $54 million will go towards the improvement of our roads, water, and sewage infrastructure. Over $31 million will go towards building and improving our facilities, such as the Ralph T. O'Neill Administration Complex, a residential facility for the homeless in Long Look, development projects at the Airport and Health Services Authority, a national detention center, and technical facilities for the Virgin Islands School of Technical Studies. We also provided support to improvements to Road Town and a program encouraging home ownership valued at $6.5 million. We look forward to the successful execution of these projects over the course of the next 4 years. Lastly, I'm pleased to announce visa-free access to Guyanese nationals to the British Virgin Islands. This step strengthens the bond between our countries and the region, facilitating greater ease in travel, trade, tourism, and investment. It underscores our shared vision of regional cooperation and opens new opportunities for people-to-people exchange. Many of our Caribbean brothers and sisters already benefit from visa-free access to the BVI, and we are pleased to extend this reciprocal courtesy to Guyana, a giant in our Caribbean community. Guyana is currently experiencing a historic economic transformation, posting a growth rate of 62.3% in 2022, the highest in the world. This growth is being driven primarily by its burgeoning oil and gas sector, alongside a diversified economy that includes strong expansions in agriculture, mining, and construction. For the BVI, this makes Guyana a key partner for collaboration and investment. But the question is, why Guyana at this time? As a CARICOM member and emerging global power, Guyana has become a model for sustainable growth and international diplomacy. Guyana's election to the United Nations Security Council places it in a pivotal position to influence the global policies on peace and security, an accomplishment that elevates the Caribbean's voice on the international stage. Guyana has become a focal point for global investment, driven by its significant oil reserves and growing non-oil sectors, for example. The oil and gas sector expanded by 124.8% in 2022. Non-oil sectors like agriculture, mining, and construction also continue to grow, further diversifying the economy. Foreign direct investment surged from $1.8 billion in 2020 to $4.3 billion in 2021. Bilateral trade with China grew to $1.88 billion in 2022, making Guyana China's most significant trading partner among CARICOM nations. Guyana's economic boom has not gone unnoticed by the international community. In recent years, several countries have launched trade missions to Guyana, aiming to establish partnerships and explore investment opportunities. The United States has sent high-level trade delegations to foster collaboration in the energy, technology, and infrastructure sectors. Canada, with a long history of mining investments in Guyana, has expanded its focus to include renewable energy, technology, and business services. The United Kingdom has also shown interest, particularly in sustainable development and infrastructure projects. Brazil, a neighboring country, has established strong ties, particularly in the energy sector, with ongoing discussions about cross-border collaboration in oil, gas, and energy infrastructure. Let me recognize the efforts of the Deputy Premier and Minister responsible for Trade, Honorable Lorna Smith, OBE. She led a mission to Guyana which was timely and fruitful. As promised, we have advanced visa-free access, and we are currently working on an MOU for deepening cooperation between Guyana and the BVI. We can expect that we will have similar missions to other areas of importance. For instance, I will soon have high-level engagement with officials from the Dominican Republic. I will share more on this in the near future. Thank you for your kind attention, and I'll now take questions from the press. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier, for providing those updates on the recent developments. At this time, I would open the floor to the members of the press. You're reminded to not only identify yourselves, but also the agencies you represent.
Good morning, Premier. Good morning, everyone. Cheers to a new week. Premier, you would have spoken glowingly about your government's, legislators' ability to have successfully completed those reforms. Could you say to what extent, I know it's over a period that these reforms have been passing through the House of Assembly and approving, to what extent have we started implementation of these reforms?
That is an excellent question, Sister Kathy. We are right now formulating an implementation plan in our medium to long-term governance reform strategy. So, of course, various ministries would be at various points based on the legislation which is passed, but quite a majority of the legislation is only being either recently assented to or we're still awaiting assent for these pieces of legislation so that we can begin the work of implementing these reforms. So this, in essence, will represent the next phase of governance reform, implementation along with the education campaign to ensure that the public is aware of exactly what is taking place. For instance, we have our Crown Lands Management Bill, and I'm meeting with our Ministry of Environment this week to go through the plans for implementation of this important piece of legislation. I'll be doing the same. Of course, we have the Immigration and Passport Amendment Act is yet to be assented to, but I'll be going through a similar exercise with the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sustainable Development as it pertains to immigration. But of course we've done a lot. Therefore, it would be most useful, I would say, for various ministries to give updates on their roles in implementing governance reform.
Okay, and follow up to that. Could you say what percentage of the reforms have been assented to so far?
I can't give percentage if P.S. Igwe has that information. We probably awaiting assent right now is the Immigration and Passport Amendment Act. We have the inquiries bill. We have the Registrar of Interest bill. We have the Service Commissions Amendment Act. We recently passed those statutory board pieces of Amendment Act. We also have the Ports Authority Amendment Act, Health Services Authority Amendment Act, and National Parks Trust Amendment Act. And I'm trying to see if I can remember if we have any more awaiting assent. Those are the public service management bill, I think, is the other one.
Okay. And further to that, same question as another follow up on that one. Are all those under the governor's purview been passed?
Okay, after a bill is passed, the Attorney General will have to prepare the amendments. So some of them had not been received by the governor as yet. For instance, those statutory board pieces of legislation, the governor's office would not have received them as yet. So they go from the Attorney General's chambers back to the House of Assembly. The House of Assembly also has their due diligence process, and they would then send it on to the governor's office for assent. So he should have a few of them, and he's going through his process in terms of assent. Important to note, the Constitution outlines the very strict criteria for denying assent to legislation. So you can find that in the Constitution. But once those requirements in the Constitution are met, the governor should assent to the pieces of legislation.
I was specifically referring to those legislations that were under the governor's, those that under security and those that he was responsible for sending to the House of Assembly for passage. Those are the ones you're referring to?
Are you asking whether he's...
He's completed his. Did he send all that he was supposed to send to? Because he cannot pass without it coming to the House of Assembly. And so we understand that there are those that fell under him.
Yes.
Are those complete?
In terms of assent?
Yeah. No, as passing in the House.
Yes. I should clarify. We went beyond the COI recommendations in some instances. So, for instance, we undertook on our own to do election reform. Okay, so that is still with the Deputy Governor's office, and we are waiting to receive that in Cabinet. When we receive that in Cabinet, we'll take that on to the House of Assembly. So that's election reform. We're also going to be passing in the House of Assembly whistleblower. That is not under the governor at the moment. I think it's under the Ministry of Finance, but responsibility for that will be transferred to, I think, primary responsibility to the Complaints Commissioner. And when we go to the House of Assembly, we'll determine the best place for it to sit rather than under the Minister of Finance.
Okay. On the second area that you touched, this is my second. First, I want to say kudos to acknowledge, in fact, Honorable Julian Fraser, who initiated the conversation of visa-free travel for Guyanese, and I think that was in either 2022 when there was that vigil for those kids who would have died. He started that conversation, and I'm happy to know that your government saw it important to come through with it. But can you tell us, for population, of Guyanese in the Virgin Islands. Could you say what's the statistics look like? And if you can say in terms of what percentage we have as belongers and the percentage that resident working on permits?
Well, the Guyanese nationals here are among the biggest groups that we have here. This is just memory. I don't have statistics in front of me, but I know we have probably over 1,000 Guyanese nationals here in the Virgin Islands. You know, in terms of the groups which are biggest here, you would have the St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Guyana, Dominican Republic. Those would be among the highest persons that we have here. I can't tell you how many of those persons are belongers. In fact, moving forward, I would like to see us improve our regime for capturing those type of statistics. That's something that we're working on as it pertains to our reform plans right now. I can't tell you how many of those persons have residence, but of course, we want to let those individuals know that travel to and from the Virgin Islands will be a lot easier now. As it pertains to denials, the Ministry for Financial Services, Labor and Trade informed me that over the years they only had 2 denials of applications for visas. That shows you that it's, you know, the risk associated with removing the visas is not that high. But I should say to you as well, despite that, we're still going to be working with Guyana directly on matters of security and immigration. We have the Advanced Passenger Information System now that assists us to get information on persons traveling to the BVI in advance. So that helps us. We have our border management system as well that will allow us. And there are other measures that we can take to ensure that we receive information early and persons of interest that we can flag them and possibly even deny them travel to the BVI. I should mention that, of course, we just have our electronic ED cards, which are being launched today, and which is a huge accomplishment for us. And all of this is speaking to our commitment to technology, to digital transformation, and the type of benefits that can have even in terms of protecting the citizens of the Virgin Islands by being able to provide information early on all persons traveling into the Virgin Islands.
Okay, did you say when this takes effect? The visa-free travel, is it immediate or there's a date from which?
I would have to discuss that with the Department of Immigration and the Ministry for Tourism of Culture and Sustainable Development. But the cabinet decision was passed, so the implementation should take place quickly.
Following on that, you said that conversation will soon start with the Dominican Republic. You give extensively the grounds on which this was made possible for Guyana.
Yes.
What are some of the grounds for you to go into conversation with the Dominican Republic, as opposed to places like Jamaica and others who are not?
The Dominican Republic, I don't have the statistics in front of me right now, but from my memory, they were the second largest recipient of direct foreign investment into the Western Hemisphere. You know, the Dominican Republic is a massive economic power in this hemisphere, and it makes sense for us to have a relationship with them. Obviously, we have historic ties. We have deeper ties with the Dominican Republic than we have with Guyana. We have many persons who've gone to the Dominican Republic to work. This is back, of course, before we had our modern economy, when we had to go cut cane and work in the sugar factories, etc. So we have historic and familial ties. And the Dominican Republic, as it pertains to their economy, it's massive. And of course, we have also great opportunities for tourism with the Dominican Republic. A lot of persons, I'm not sure how much they know about how much of an economic power the Dominican Republic is. So a lot of the same things I said about Guyana would apply to the Dominican Republic, and even more so in some instances as it pertains to potential in places like agriculture and things like that.
Thank you so much, Premier.
Yeah, thank you.
Morning, Premier. Morning, everyone. Kamal Haynes of Tweet 4 Media.
Good morning.
Premier, my first question is as it relates to the initial $100 million approval for the loan. You would have given some figures moments ago in your speech, $50 million for infrastructure, 30 for improving facilities. I'm not sure if the $6.5 million for home ownership initiative, if that's part of...
That's also with the road town improvement.
Okay. Yeah. So with that being said, I know there was like another $13.5 to $20 million that was not really mentioned in terms of what that additional money will be allocated towards. And in light of the recent, healthcare situation we would have seen being voiced, especially on Virgin Gorda, is any of those funds allocated for that for the healthcare issues we're facing presently in the Virgin Islands? And if so, could you give a breakdown as it relates to figures, especially per island and per clinic, as that was one of the main issues raised at the last meeting on Virgin Gorda, and as in addition to also as it relates to outstanding payments and bills when it comes to the healthcare sector?
The role of the loan isn't for some of the things that you said. Some of those things will be financing through our normal budgetary process. But let me start with what the loan is going towards. Based on what it is I outlined, we got up to over 90 million. And there is about, we have the Ministry of Finance here, they can correct me, but between 7 and 8 million to finance balloon payments. That are due, and when is it due? 2026. And the Ministry of Finance are here, they can speak to the importance of that, because I know in the House of Assembly some persons question it. But the strategy that the Ministry of Finance has done in refinancing some of the payments has saved us a very significant amount of money. We can point to a Banco Popular loan that we refinanced at Republic Bank. Has saved the people of the Virgin Islands a great deal of money. So that basically accounts for all of the money for the loan, with the exception of the closing fees, which amounted to maybe about close to $500,000. As it pertains to improving the healthcare infrastructure, yes, some of the loan will be going towards improving healthcare infrastructure. That's about $4 million, which will be going to the Health Services Authority. But I don't want persons to get confused, because through our regular budgetary process, we have made funds available to the Health Services Authority. We provide over $40 million to the Health Services Authority for their operations. But one thing we're going to be doing with the Health Services Authority, and I said this a little bit in my debate on the Health Services Authority Amendment Act, we have to solve the challenge of sustainable financing of healthcare. Healthcare can I'm trying to find a different term than broke, right? That's colloquial term, but it can drive any government to bankruptcy. Let me say it like that. Healthcare costs around the world are massive. It causes challenges in the United Kingdom. It causes challenges in the United States of America and Canada, all over the place. And these are wealthy countries. So we have our limitations. What would assist us is having a sustainable system that includes insurance. It's impossible for us to finance healthcare without insurance. And the national health insurance that we have now has to be a part of the solution for the sustainable financing of healthcare, because governments won't be able to do it on their own. Right now, our national health insurance is not benefiting our public healthcare institutions as much as it should. The reason for that is because the national health insurance has an arrangement with the hospital right now for a global payment, meaning regardless of the services which are being provided, they have one static figure that is supposed to represent all the services which are being provided. Now, one thing that the minister, Honorable Vincent Wheatley, has done is that he has institutionalized the contract committee, which is something that was institutionalized before, but it fell away. It became defunct after the hurricanes. So he has reinstituted that, and that's a step towards ensuring that we have a relationship between our National Health Services, our HSA, and also our national insurance. I'm also asking for amendments to our national health insurance that will allow persons who government is already paying for to use our public healthcare institutions as opposed to going to private healthcare institutions. Obviously, some persons won't like it, but that's the only way we're going to get sustainable financing for our Health Services Authority. Because as many persons said in the House of Assembly, that's our first call when we get sick, when we have an emergency. We go to the emergency room at the Dr. D. Orlando Smith Hospital. So we have to make sure that we don't just focus on funding private healthcare institutions, we focus on funding our public health infrastructure.
Okay, my first follow-up, as you would have mentioned in terms of your response, over $4 million allocated to the healthcare, addressing the healthcare issues in the territory.
Well, the infrastructural development projects at the hospital.
Okay, the infrastructure, so that's specific to the hospital on Tortola. I know as Minister of Finance, we're pretty close to the next budget cycle. In light of what I would have just asked in terms of, the allocation as it relates to the healthcare system and per clinic and also per island, will that be something that will be adjusted to ensure that that is addressed, especially in terms of transparency when it comes to the figures, at least for the next budget cycle?
I'm certainly committed, and I know the Minister of Health is committed to ensuring that the clinics, especially those in the sister islands where they don't have access to, the big hospital like we do on Tortola, to ensure that the clinics are equipped to be able to handle emergency situations. That's our commitment, whether it's through this loan or whether it's through our budgetary process. We are committed to that. The minister is working to ensure that the challenges which exist are being addressed and resolved. He had said at my last press conference that he's going to be hosting a press conference, so I think he'll perhaps be best to speak about the detail of what's happening at the hospital and the clinics. But part of my duty as the Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Finance team is to making sure that we have the funding available to execute their projects. But exactly how they distribute the money is a conversation between the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Finance. I believe the Ministry of Finance has been accommodating in terms of how they would like to see those funds spent.
Okay, my second follow-up question to that, my initial question. You would have mentioned $80 million towards the infrastructure and improving facilities. What percentage of that also expands to the other islands? I know they don't oftentimes like to be referred to as sister islands, but for example, Anegada, Jocelyn Dyke, Virgin Gorda, in terms of the $80 million of the $100 million loan, what portion of this goes to addressing those same infrastructure and facility issues on the sister islands?
You mean in terms of roads?
The road infrastructure, you mentioned that
roads,
$50 million for infrastructure, $30 million for improving facilities. So what portion of that $80 million from the $100 million loan benefits these sister islands?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you the percentage that's going to the percentage that goes to various islands. I can't say that to you, but I can tell you that the Ministry of Communications and Works, as a part of the tender that went out for the roads, which of course, we are still considering. It hasn't gotten to cabinet yet, so we can consider it. But I can tell you that that the Ministry of Communications and Works has a plan for the improvement of roads across the sister islands. Obviously, focusing on the worst areas. So that's something that we can return to. Sewage, we have a focus on sewage in Eastern Longlook at the moment. Also King Garden Bay and Road Town. Those are the main areas of focus as it pertains to sewage. Water distribution, of course, that's going to be across all the islands of the territory. In terms of improvement in facilities, a few of those facilities are on Tortola, but of course, this is a national problem that we have as it pertains to illegal immigration. They land on all types of different islands, and they're being housed. That facility will be housed on Tortola. Also, the technical studies will be housed on Tortola as well. The improvements at the airport, of course, we have our main airport being on Beef Island, I should say. So that's where that is. And R.T. O'Neill Administration Complex, we've repaired all our administration complexes on Anigada, the Theodore Faulkner building, as well as the Flax and Vanterpool building on Virgin Gorda, as well as the Shinnery building on Jas Van Dyke. So that work has been done on the sister islands. So I notice your questions are focused on sister islands, I think rightly so. It's my commitment. We went over to Jas Van Dyke. They had a challenge with their school for many years. We went over there and built them a massive school. We've done works on all of the different sister islands. We're aware of the fact that sister islands are disadvantaged in many ways. So our commitment remains to making sure that we get the sister islands to where they need to be. It requires time, it requires money, it requires resources, but we're committed to doing that.
Okay, I'll move on to my next question, but I also just want to know, Premier, in terms of even the initiative that you would have mentioned just now, as it relates to the ones to come. Most of what you would have mentioned are initiatives based on Tortola, and the majority of the ones you would have mentioned are, as it relates to sister islands, have already been completed. So I just wanted to focus mainly on, of the $100 million loan, what were the plans in terms of the initial projects that are to come that will be on the sister islands as well. I just wanted to know that. In terms of my second question is on obviously the lifting of the visa requirements for Guyanese nationals. But we do know, based on your information that you would have provided also as well, the Tortola, the BVI diaspora, and in terms of when we look at the residents, we look at the breakdown of what makes up the British Virgin Islands, we have a large portion of Guyanese nationals that oftentimes generally would have had to pay the visa fee every year to basically renew their legitimacy of being here in the territory. Obviously, that would have come with some form of revenue. Could you, in terms of, if you may know, or some of your personnel here may know from the ministry, what was that revenue in terms of that the territory would have generated? And in light of the loss of that revenue, what other revenue generated initiatives will be put in place, considering that, the most recent press conference, generally in the House of Assembly, government talks about generating new initiatives, especially in light of a much larger salary structure as it relates to government, etc. Know that government don't have to do on an annual basis. With this loss of revenue, what will government be doing to replace that, and what figure was that initial revenue?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is a valid question. Whenever you have initiatives that bring in resources, whether it's licenses, fees, whatever, it's something you go through on a regular basis. For instance, you have persons who've been paying immigration for time. They become nationals. They no longer have to pay that. That's just a part of the process. And obviously, when it comes to revenue raising, we want things which are sustainable. Not just depending on Guyanese nationals for monies to support our budget. I don't think that the revenue part of the visas, it was the main focus of having a visa regime in place. And I would discourage that type of thinking in doing these type of things, putting visas and things like that on nationals to raise revenues. When we raise revenues, first of all, we want to stimulate economic activity. And that's partly what we're doing with the trade relationship with Guyana. We want to be able to stimulate economic activity, whether through cooperation on agriculture, cooperation on, of course, our financial services as it pertains to their oil and gas sector, providing those services for them, supporting our financial services sector, which accounts for, about 60% of government revenue. And so that's the focusing on things like that. But overall, of course, in terms of creating more revenue, we have a focus on our tourism sector. That's why we're pushing projects for B-File and pushing projects for the expansion of Nanny Key, pushing projects for the Prospect Reef Hotel, we have the O'Neills doing their hotel development at Port Purcell. And we have other investors who we're in conversations with. The wheels have been turning slowly, I admit, but we are making significant progress on all of those fronts, and I expect to see us having a lot more groundbreakings in the near future. So that's the commitment we have as it pertains to expanding the runway of the airport. Those things are designed to create more economic activity, have more visitors visit the country. The visitors pay more fees. We have a number of fees that visitors pay. This year, so far, we've had the best first quarter tourism numbers in our history. We've had the best numbers for the first 6 months in our history. So we're focused on ensuring that the tourism sector brings in more revenues. Stamp duty is up. Stamp duty is providing us much more revenue than in the past. We've had a lot of conversations with the Ministry of Environment to see how we can get the non-belanger landholding licenses processed more quickly. How do we make the process easier, and that brings in more revenue into the country? We're also looking at the Commercial Recreational Vessel Licensing Act. That act was passed in 1992 and has never been amended since. So that's over 30 years ago. So the fees are 30 years old. So that's one of the immediate areas that we're going to be improving on revenue. Those 30, we're going to have I don't want to scare anybody, but the fees have to get up to 2024 levels. And that's going to bring in a lot more revenue. And I'm tasking every ministry. We can't do all the revenue initiatives at the same time. We have to be able to phase them in. But I'm charging the ministries and also charging the Ministry of Finance to come with a few areas where we have some revenue raising initiatives. We don't want to hit our people in their pocket when they're struggling. So find some of the opportunities to raise fees in areas that don't hurt the most vulnerable in our population. I could speak also to the work in SIGTAS to be able to collect outstanding revenues. And very soon we're going to be coming with a good standing policy that will assist us in collecting the revenues we've having a hard time collecting. There's a number of things that we're doing. Pension reform, that's an unfunded liability. That's something that's coming very soon. When we get that administration complex fixed, we'll be able to save some money on all of the rental of the offices. A number of things are taking place so that we can save revenue and bring in new revenue.
Okay, my first follow-up to that, Premier, you didn't give a figure as it relates to, estimate as it relates to what the potential revenue was from the initial visa requirement for Guyanese.
Yeah, I'll have to get that to you. We'll take that away and we'll see if we could get that for you.
Okay. And that also, too, was on the backdrop, too, as it relates to the question We do know that generally to make such decisions, it's not necessarily just a focus on the fee as it relates to, the being such a decision. You're really morally good for such a decision to allow,
Yes.
the certain sacrifices that are made. Yes, but I'm sure obviously with such decisions, I'm sure there are audits that are done to ensure, okay, well, when we make this decision, how does it affect the BV economy as it
I
relates to
agree.
revenue?
I agree. And we're going through our budgetary process. I believe now we have a date for when we're doing a budget speech that we'll be announcing shortly. And all of those things you can expect me to speak about in the budget speech as it pertains to sustainability of our budget moving forward. And some of those questions you're asking are very important. But we'll outline a vision in the budget speech, especially how we continue to be able to fund our commitments moving forward.
Okay, my second follow-up, you would have mentioned potential plans or plans in the works as it relates to similar conversations with the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
What about also too in Jamaica as well? Considering that you on several previous instances you would have mentioned about potentially moving closer to joining CARICOM and being part of the CARICOM community, and obviously being part of the CARICOM community. We obviously can't alienate our brothers and sisters
Yes.
in the region. So, what are there any plans to approach a similar initiative for Jamaica as well?
Yeah, well, let me just say that we have many Jamaican nationals here in the Virgin Islands who are making a wonderful contribution to our economy. I know when that visa restriction came on, it's in recent memory that visa restriction came on. I think it might have been in response to some unfortunate incidents, criminal activity by some Jamaican nationals here, in which that decision was taken. But I think as we go on and on, we have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis. We have to take a look, just like what was done for Guyana, we have to take a look at the amount of denials we are having, whatever challenges we might have as it pertains to any particular national, do our evaluation and make a decision, especially as it pertains to the benefits that can be accrued based on lifting the visa access. But I can tell you what process I'm going through as it pertains to visas. We want a regime that makes sense. We want a regime that makes sense. For instance, you can't tell me why Guyana should have a visa restriction and St. Vincent shouldn't have a visa restriction. For me, there was no logical reason why that could take place. And we could also, when we do the analysis, look at Jamaica and see, well, why would Jamaica have a visa restriction and some other country does not? So we need to be able to rationalize that for ourselves. Like we have a visa restriction on Jamaica, but we don't have one on Trinidad. And we know that we have some challenges coming out of Trinidad as it pertains to some security issues. So first thing we have to do is rationalize our visa regime. We also have to recognize there are other tools for us. This is not back in the 1970s or the 1980s. We have tools, we have information sharing, and that would be critical in any decision to remove visas, is the cooperation among law enforcement agencies to be able to share information so that we can make sure we keep the people of the Virgin Islands safe in the event that any undesirable persons who are engaged in gangs or anything like that would want to travel to the Virgin Islands and to cause some challenges and cause some problems for us. So, one, let's rationalize our visa regime. Two, let's make sure we use all the tools available to us, advanced passenger information systems. In some instances, we can even look at travel authorizations, which will allow persons to seek travel authorizations in advance to ensure that due diligence is done in terms of all the persons traveling to the Virgin Islands. This electronic ED cards is a part of the whole picture as well. So moving forward, you can be assured that we will do an evaluation, including places like Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, and other places, to make sure that we have a regime that will encourage trade and investment, but also keep the people of the Virgin Islands safe.
Thank you, Premier.
Shanda Joseph, BVI News. First question in regards to Guyana. You spoke about their resources. Are there any plans for trade agreements for petroleum in the works, or do you intend to bring it up?
Well, I mean, I know they have their agreements they've made as it pertains to refineries, etc. And I would imagine that we would go through our normal process as it pertains to importation of fuel and things like that here, which is something that the private sector does, the electricity corporation does. But you know, it certainly would be wonderful if we had a regime in place that would allow cheaper access to fuel. But beyond that, we are more focused on renewable energy. That's our main focus and our main goal here. So, you know, the first order of business is getting that STEP program up and running that the BVI Electricity Corporation has. That's a solar technology energy program, trying to put solar panels on every roof. We want to have a much more substantial amount of our energy produced from renewable sources. We're happy for Guyana and their success. I know they as well, even though they've gone into the oil and gas sector, is using the profits from that sector to make a stronger transition into renewable energy.
All right, and my second question, you also mentioned an MOU. Can you give us the details of that?
It was passed in cabinet some weeks ago for us to have a memorandum of understanding with Guyana, you know, focusing on a number of areas: trade and investment, immigration, perhaps agriculture, and some other areas. So we had to seek permission from the United Kingdom government, the Secretary of State. That's consistent with our constitution. So we had the cabinet agreement that allowed us to do that, and now we're engaging with officials from Guyana and putting together this MOU. This is being led by the Ministry of Financial Services, Labor and Trade. And when it comes time for that MOU to be signed, of course we'll make a big thing of it. We'll have Guyanese officials along with myself who are able to sign that. So we look forward to that.
And by what time frame do you expect to have that completed by?
Right now I can't give a time frame, but I would like to see it done within the next 6 months or so. That would be ideal for us.
All right, no problem. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. It's nice to see you. Sean Connolly from Business Editor.
Good to see you as well, Sean.
Oh, thank you. From the BVI Beacon. Just to start on the $100 million loan. So obviously there's a lot of work that was promised after the hurricanes in 2017.
Yes.
Which still hasn't materialized. It includes stuff like the central administration building, extensive roadwork, removal of derelict boats, new library, cultural centre, trash incinerators in Tortola and Virgin Gorda, and sewage things. And so at the time after the hurricanes, which is like now just over 7 years ago, it was estimated to be 500 million to 700 million to get recovery, to restore all of that. How far do you think this 100 million can go realistically in the face of that? And is there a plan of what to prioritise? Could we see the plan? And is there a new plan, or are you still working on the previous recovery and development plan?
Okay, thank you for that. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, sorry.
But we are still working from the old recovery and development plan. But right now we are advancing discussions on the transition from the Recovery and Development Agency to a Virgin Islands Development Agency. And I think in that transition from a Recovery and Development Agency to a Virgin Islands Development Agency, we will have some discussions on plans. Most likely that recovery plan will migrate over to this Virgin Islands Development Agency. And this agency, similar to the Recovery and Development Agency, as a part of its mandate, will have an infrastructural development plan for the next 10, 20 years. So that we can have a kind of cohesive, coherent approach to our infrastructural development. Let me just say that since 2017, a lot of work has been done. Let's remember we have over I think the statistics were over $3.6 billion worth of damage. We didn't get much assistance from the United Kingdom or others, and this is the reason. And let me just make sure I say that we appreciate the assistance that we were given, but because of our status, we couldn't. Because of our GDP per capita, we couldn't receive ODA money, for instance. That's not the United Kingdom's fault. That's just how the OECD rules work. But we've been advocating for a more fair measuring tool to evaluate eligibility for concessional finance. What we've been advocating for is a multidimensional vulnerability index. So you would see places like Dominica and others getting tens of millions of dollars, even from the United Kingdom. Places like Antigua, Dominica, other places like that. And the BVI got a big zero, big donut for us. Of course, we had the United Kingdom come here. They sent the ship and the military persons come here to support us in the initial phase of the recovery. But as it pertains to that type of assistance, we haven't received any of that. So we are relying on the strength of our own economy to recover, and we've had to take very expensive loans. And this $100 million loan is an instance for that. We have 6.5% interest, which is not cheap. But of course, we are subject to market rates as opposed to concessional finance rates, and that's a challenge for us. Okay, so climate justice is something that we're advocating for. Right now, we are not a party to the convention, the UN Framework Convention for Climate Change. Meaning, while other countries they are being considered for funds for loss and damage, acknowledgement that we did not cause the climate crisis, but we're suffering from it. They created a loss and damage fund. That was a big thing at the last COP. COP, I believe it would be COP 20. Yeah, COP 29. Either 28 or 29 was the last one. Yeah, so the Conference of Parties, they had a thing, and they established a loss and damage fund. Well, we can't get any of that. We don't get any funds from the adaptation funds or the mitigation funds, green climate funds. We're denied all of that. So given the circumstances, the lack of assistance we've gotten when our territory was completely devastated by the worst disaster in our history, I think we're doing pretty well, considering all that we've gone through. We had to repair all of our schools. We've had to repair our government administration buildings. We've had to repair our recreational facilities. We've had to help persons who've had their homes destroyed get back into their homes. And one day I'm going to just come and list out all the things that we've done, because one thing that happens with us, we forget very quickly. We build something, we have a ribbon cutting, and then we just forget it ever happened. And then persons just move on to the other problem. But we need to take a little opportunity to pat ourselves on the back and say, we've done well. we've shown a great deal of resilience. And this loan represents a significant step in completing our recovery. You mentioned the administration complex. I should say a lot of work has been done on the administration complex as well. But this loan funding will help us to complete it. We'll be very happy to have that complete. It'll be a great day in the Virgin Islands. You mentioned as well roads. Yeah, that's the next stage of our recovery, to get our roads fixed and to build the resilience into our infrastructure to ensure that the increased flooding events that we're having and increased hurricanes and tropical storms, that we are able to withstand the impacts of those. And a lot of other things that we've done to build resilience. Things like the CRIF, that helps to build resilience so that if we have a climatic event, that we have a insurance facility that can assist us with that. So just to say that I'm proud of the work that we've done. I'm sorry, I was a little long-winded there, but I was proud of the work that we've done.
You've been very diplomatic about Britain's history over the past 7 years. And basically you're saying that they haven't really done a lot, and you're saying it's because of rules. But Britain is a major global economic player in the G7 and the OECD. So
Who's that?
Britain is a major economic player in the G7 and the OECD. So they could have pushed to change those rules if they wanted. So the bottom line is that Britain hasn't done enough, is it?
Yeah, well, we've been advocating for the entire global community to acknowledge the plight of overseas territories. And the UK, we want the UK to be a strong partner with us in that advocacy. When the Minister for the Overseas Territories, Stephen Doughty, comes here, that's going to be part of our message to him. We've been really fighting the battle. I believe the United Kingdom understands our position now because we've advocated very strongly on the position. And I believe they've expressed a lot more optimism now than in the future. One thing I was encouraged by when I went to the United Kingdom recently is that there was a think tank. I think they call themselves DFI. It might be Development Finance Institute or something like that. But they are advocating for an annex to the UNFCCC. That's agreement. That's the Framework Convention for Climate Change. For the overseas territories to be acknowledged, to be a party to the agreement through an annex. So that encourages me. And the UK, we've had discussions with the United Kingdom about a dedicated facility for overseas territories to meet our climate resilience needs. So I'm encouraged, and I look forward to furthering those discussions. With the overseas territories minister.
But just to be clear, you're saying that the previous British Tory government didn't do enough over the past 7 years?
Yeah, I could say that. I don't think so. But we're making progress towards that, and I hope that we have a breakthrough soon.
And just to get an answer to my original question, I said about the 100 million. How far do you think that goes in the overall recovery need? Is it like 20% or what?
Well, you know what? I'll have to consult my team on that, particularly Dr. Glasgow, in terms of the major projects which are left. I think you listed them. Altes Catliff wasn't destroyed because of the hurricanes, but it had significant infrastructural damage. The decision was made to demolish it. We're going to rebuild Altes Catliff. We also have Isabella Maris, which was destroyed. I believe the Ministry of Education having discussions about rebuilding Isabella Maris. You mentioned the Cultural Center. Recently, we got that demolished. And of course, the Recovery and Development Agency right now is going through their process as it pertains to the next steps for rebuilding a library as well as a performing arts center there. But we've done the majority. We've done the majority of the projects already. So as we move forward, I think over the course of the next 2.5 years or so, I believe by the end of that, we would be able to say that we've completed the majority of the recovery projects, probably with a few exceptions.
Okay, as a follow-up to the first question,
Mr. Connolly,
the loan.
can I just interject? Just be mindful, cognizant of the time. Make sure that you're not infringing on the guidelines that we.
Well, no, but several people have asked several more questions. I would point out the loan, the 100 million loan. What is the interest payment on that? What will be the end return that you have to pay? And has it been underwritten by the UK or guaranteed by the UK?
No, it hasn't been guaranteed by the UK, but of course, we are contingent liability on the UK anyway. So if we can't repay, they have to repay, and that's perhaps why they put such strong measures in place to ensure that we can manage our debt, because ultimately it's a contingent liability on the UK. But no, we don't have any concessional rates based on our relationship with the UK. One thing I should say, though, we are going through a debt rating exercise. I believe our relationship with the UK, KPMG is doing that with Standards and Poor's, S&P Standard and Poor's. So our relationship with the UK, I believe, will assist us, and if we do get a good credit rating there, we could see the interest rates go down.
Okay. On my second question, you kicked off with the good governance measures.
But sorry, you did ask me how much the interest rate was. Let me answer that before I move on. 6.5%, fixed for 10 years. After 10 years, we have the option of renegotiating a fixed rate, or we can also go with a floating rate.
What would the full return payment be then? At the moment?
I don't have the figures for exactly how much we'll pay in interest payments as well. As you know, that's a bank's work. They make a good amount of money on the interest. I don't have the figures.
Okay. As I was saying, the good governance measures have now gone through Parliament, the House of Assembly. Part of good governance, the key part, is obviously transparency. Last time we were here, I was asking you about BVIEC and the data breach that
I think they put out something since then. Did you see it? I think they put out some. Yeah, that's you should be thanked for that.
Okay, thank you. So, are you happy with the situation now? Do you think things are in place to stop it being repeated?
The breach?
Yeah.
Yes, we had conversations with the General Manager, Electricity Corporation. I believe he taken a number of measures to ensure that they have that data security in place.
All right. Okay. Finally, there's going to be a dock strike.
Mr.
Sorry.
Conley, you've exceeded your time, so I'll just defer to the media partner here. Thank you.
ATU is doing it. Okay, let me just correct something I said. It's ATU in collaboration with S&P that's doing the debt rating exercise. Yes, sovereign rating exercise.
Morning. Zan Lewis, ZBV Radio. Premier threw out a question a while ago why Guyanese should be given visa and not Vincentians. That's easy to answer. Very easy to answer, but I won't go there now.
Go ahead, my Vincentian.
No, I won't go there now, sir. Premier, you came to the House of Assembly asking for the support of the opposition for this $100 million. Not plenty money, but it seems as though you came there, according to what I've listened to, without a plan. You came there, you outlined certain areas where these monies will go to. And you said in your address that I am just mentioning these. Why mention some and not the others when you are coming to the House of Assembly asking for the support of everyone? Shouldn't you have had it better documented if you're asking support?
I think I mentioned during the House of Assembly the majority of the projects that we were doing. I added to that when I spoke today. I think the only thing I left out at the time was the road town improvement and perhaps the initiative to encourage the housing.
So you will come out later on. I hope that you will come out with a better list, a list indicating what areas will be developed.
I think when we go through our budget process, and you see the budget, you're going to see all the projects we're working on outlined specifically in the capital section of the budget.
I suppose, sir, that most of these funds will go to water, road, and sewage.
Yes.
How much money is allocated to sewage, how much to roads, and how much to water?
All right. Thank you, sir. Let me get that information for you. Okay, water, in the loan, we have $8 million allocated for that. As it pertains to roads and sewage, bear with me a second. Roads, we have $34.8 million in the loan. But of course, we have other monies in the budget for roads that are not coming from loan proceeds, coming from, for example, our Transportation Network Improvement Fund and other areas of the budget. We also have in the loan here $3.9 million for sewage in King Garden Bay and $7.150 in Eastern Longlook National Sewage Program.
So you are sure that those figures that you put out there will end the problems with sewage, will end the problems with water, and the road infrastructure will be dealt with?
In the whole of the Virgin Islands?
Yeah.
No, that's not gonna solve all the problems in the Virgin Islands. But what we hope for that money to do, and I have the director of projects here, he can supplement if necessary. What we expect that to do is to be able to get a sewage system on stream in Eastern Longlook to get us operational. And of course, we'll have to continue works in various parts of the Virgin Islands which do not have a functioning sewage system right now, and the population would necessitate having a sewage system. Of course, we have the septic tank system that we've used for a very long time. Challenge with the septic tanks is when you have some of these big apartments, and persons have these small septic tanks that can handle, all the output from these apartments. Then you have this sewage water that ends up overflowing and running into our streets and destroying our roads and, being an unsanitary, unhealthy mess. That's a situation we've been facing for Eastern and Longlook for several decades now. And I hope to bring that to an end.
So you are saying, sir, that the problems with sewage will end? You said earlier some time ago, sir, that the water wars and the sewage problems that people continue to face in the territory, you're going to borrow this $100 million and all of this will be over.
No.
They will not be over?
We'll have ongoing infrastructural development as it pertains to roads, water, and sewage. These won't end those, but they'll make a significant contribution to dealing with the sewage in King Garden Bay and also in Eastern Longlook, as well as Road Town.
In relation to the COI, will it be correct to say, sir, that all the recommendations in this COI have been completed, they have been taken to the House of Assembly and dealt with?
Yeah, I gave the caveat that we had some additional reforms that we agreed to outside of what Sir Gary Hickenbottom recommended. So we do have the Whistleblower Act and the election bill that will come to the House of Assembly shortly. But what Sir Gary Hickenbottom recommended, we've dealt with all of those. But as I said in my press statement, we have some recommendations that require action on the part of the judiciary That's like the criminal procedure rules. We also have recommendations which require constitutional reform. For instance, this whole idea of juryless trials. That's one area that will require constitutional reform. The Constitutional Review Commission took a look at that area. We have bills waiting for assent. I think that's the majority of what is outstanding.
Premier, I understand all of that. But what I'm saying, one of the reasons why the ordering council remained over the head of the people of the BVI was because the recommendations were incomplete. And it was given, and one of the reasons why it was still there, they were making sure that you complete these recommendations in the COI recommendations. So it will be clear to say now that seeing that you have reached thus far, there's nothing else should stop or prevent the UK from removing this ordering council. That'll be a correct statement?
Well, we've done our part. I think from the UK perspective, they're looking at the bills when they receive assent. You know, they're looking at all the way to assent. So all the bills haven't been assented to. We hope that by the time the Minister for the Overseas Territories comes, they will be assented to, and we can make a very strong case to have that ordering council removed. Whenever I have the opportunity, I advocate for its removal because I believe it's not necessary. I believe it's unjust, and I believe it should be removed.
Premier, do you oblige to taking any more questions?
Sure.
Okay, so after this question, we'll have an additional question from each member of the media,
Yes.
if they would like to do so.
After this, I'm dealing with the same issue with the ordering council.
So you can ask the follow-up question and we'll move on.
Okay. Premier, but I have difficulty in saying, when and you continue to repeat this, when you get the opportunity to do so, you speak about the ordering council. That should be a priority.
It is a priority.
But it does not sound so.
Okay.
The Premier, if you have been reporting, when you go to your last trip to the UK, you indicated to the Minister of the Overseas Territory of the work that is being done. You outlined everything to that person as regards making sure these recommendations are in place. Why is it, sir, the UK Overseas Minister has to come here and still make an assessment of the situation? You don't trust your word?
Well, I think we have a responsibility to ensure that we give the minister as much information as possible. Of course, you can receive reports from your officials, but nothing beats coming down here and speaking to the financial secretary, speaking to the permanent secretary, speaking to some of the officials doing the work. You know, nothing replaces that. And he also has the opportunity to see these islands and meet the people that he's instrumental in helping to govern. And I do advocate for that. When you are these faraway places and you're making decisions that affect us here, at least come here and see the people that you're affecting. Meet them, have the opportunity to answer their questions. And I hope that when the minister comes here, that we make it very clear to the minister and make it very clear to his officials that we are proud of the work that we've done and that we don't think that this ordering council is necessary. And beyond that, we want a better relationship with the United Kingdom, a relationship that's based on mutual trust, mutual respect, and cooperation, as opposed to colonial tools like orders and councils.
Thank you, Premier. JTV.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for the opportunity, and thanks, Premier. Premier, this is back to the loan that we would have gotten from CIBC, First Caribbean.
Yes.
Help us to understand what was the strategy used in coming up with $100 million as opposed to 100 million and 5,000 or more or less. What was the strategy? What was the plan that you would have had that would have brought you to that figure, 100 million?
Thank you, Kathy. You know, I pushed the Ministry of Finance, but I have to congratulate the Ministry of Finance. They went through their due diligence. So it's not just the Premier comes up with $100 million and the Ministry of Finance says, okay, we'll get you a loan for $100 million. We started with a medium-term fiscal plan. I would have announced it in the budget first, right? We started with a medium-term fiscal plan that basically put that $100 million into the plan, and we see how we're able to finance it over, at the very least, a 3-year period. And then coming out of the medium-term fiscal plan, we decided we had to have a debt strategy. So when we examine the debt strategy, we can look at how we are financing our debt, at least over 3 years. And even beyond, we have information for beyond. So the most important thing is that we borrow a figure that we can afford to repay. So that's responsible borrowing, that we borrow a figure that we can still maintain our ratios for the protocols for effective financial management. We have 3 main ratios, right? We have a debt financing ratio that we have to maintain 10%. I think it's 10%. Is it recurrent expenditure or recurrent revenue? Okay, 10% of recurrent revenue. We can't go beyond that in terms of our debt servicing. So we also have our liquidity ratio, and it has to be 25%, I believe, of recurrent expenditure. And then we have our net debt ratio, which I think is about 80% of our recurrent revenues. Yeah? 80% of recurrent revenues, I believe. And we are far off of that. That one isn't a problem. It's really liquidity. And I'm told that our debt service ratios are also pretty good right now. Moving through the loan, there's some things that we need to do to ensure that we don't breach our debt servicing ratio and that we stay well within the limits of our liquidity ratio.
Okay, just a quick follow-up. Given that explanation, why is it not possible for you to itemize per dollar and cents what this money that you're getting from CIBC First Caribbean are going to be allotted to?
Okay, I mean, I tried to just kind of generalize, but if you want me to go through it, we have 3 million for VI technical studies, 6.5 million National Detention Center, 4 million hospital improvements, 6 million airport authority, 8 million water network improvement, $10 million administration complex, $1.8 million housing for the Alms House. We have 5 million to encourage the housing program. I gave the figures for the sewage and the roads already, and I think that's it. I mean, there's nothing that we're trying to hide. I really don't understand what the I don't quite understand what the issue is.
Not an issue, just wanted clarity.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, JTV. And since there are no final questions, I give everyone the opportunity. Do you want to have a final question?
Sure.
I didn't ask, but I did mention this. I said this is the opportunity. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Okay.
That's a final question.
Premier ready?
Yes, go ahead.
Premier, when I asked you a question a while ago, you made mention as regards the ordering council, and you're waiting for the ascension by the governor of these number of bills that are currently before him. And it depends on that, given he given ascension or putting a signature to those bills, which will determine how soon the ordering council will be removed. So would you say, sir, the faster he deals with it is the better for the territory, or is he at this time holding up the issue? Right, well, having so many bills before him to put his signature, is he holding up the process as regards to this ordering council being removed?
You talking about the governor?
Yeah.
I think he would say he's going through his process. Being diligent, not seeking to make any mistakes. of course, we all are on deadline, so we would hope that we go through those processes as quickly as possible.
So he's not holding up the process.
Well, we all need to make sure that we go as quickly as possible, because at this stage, of course, we're past our deadlines, and that we need the work to be completed. So I know that he is going about his work as quickly as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And in closing, at this time, I want to say a special thank you to the Facilities Department. Thank you for your continued support in helping to make this press conference a success. I would also like to thank GIS, CBN, and ZBVA for their dedication in broadcasting and this very important press conference today. Thank you as well to both our listening and viewing audiences. Thank you for tuning in. To the Permanent Secretary in the Premier's office, Mrs. Caroline Stowe-Igwe, thank you for your support. Also in attendance, well, she was here earlier, Dr. Lavon Chawa-Bruley, also from the Premier's office, the Deputy Secretary, and from the Ministry of Finance, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Financial Secretary, Mr. Jeremiah Frat, and the Deputy Financial Secretaries, Mr. Jeremy Vanterpool and Dr. Drexel Glasgow. Thank you for your support and being here today. To our media partners, your attendance is appreciated as well. Thank you for actively participating and asking some very pertinent questions. Premier Wheatley, thank you for your comprehensive remarks and also for facilitating the questions that the media would have had today. This press conference, just a reminder to our audiences, these press conferences are a part of the government's ongoing commitment to transparency and accountability. And of course, to keeping the public well informed. And we look forward to continue having these types of dialogues and engagements. But until then, have a wonderful rest of the week. Enjoy the rest of your Monday as well. And thank you for your attention. I am your GIS host, Sanjay Greenwich.